Welcome to Perpetual Motion with your host, Dr. Mo Anderson, where we explore the people, passions, and principles that drive career and personal relationship progress. Today's guest is Delphia Howze, a nationally recognized thought leader, strategist, and speaker in the fields of diversity, equity, and inclusion. As the founder and CEO, y'all, of D House Solutions Incorporated, she partners with organizations to develop inclusive practices that are productive and transformational. With a long background in human resources, she brings both head and heart to conversations about creating organizational cultures that truly work for everyone. We are honored to have her with us today. Welcome, Delphia.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Likewise, likewise. I'm going to have to talk to my people, though, about all these long words in the script. I was struggling.
But you got it. You got it just perfectly.
I was like, don't trip, don't trip. You don't want to have to start over. Get this right. All them
Well,
little words, especially in the morning. Give me little words. I'm not a morning person.
you did it perfectly.
And you have such an impressive background. I didn't want to leave any of it out because listeners, be prepared. This lady brings it. She's got the receipts, and it is powerful, powerful, and transformational, as I said. So, ma'am, looking gorgeous, love the glasses. You are giving rich auntie right here. I'm loving it.
Thank you so very much. Just trying to keep up with people like you and just trying to keep the happiness in
Wow.
my world and put some out there as well.
Well, thank you. Thank you. Let's start with your journey. What inspired you to focus your career on inclusion and organizational culture? And how has your perspective evolved over time?
Yeah, so I will say I did not start off thinking that this was going to be my lifelong career. When I was in college, my goal was to be a high-powered attorney. That was my focus, and that was the direction for which I was moving. Once I graduated and was in law school, I realized that maybe that was not the right path for me. So I did a little bit of a pivot, but I started my career in banking, and in the banking industry, everyone realizes that there's an opportunity to build relationships with the client. And my particular location, I was a regional manager. I had branches that were in areas that were more of an urban setting. However, the people who were hired for those to manage those branches and to be the leaders of those branches we're not from that setting nor from that environment. So there was a disconnect in understanding the needs and the way in which we could effectively connect with the people of the community. And I recognized that as a challenge that was hindering productivity and success. And so I started to do a little bit of research and ultimately went to the president and said, hey, we have an issue here. We have an opportunity to increase revenue, to bring value to the bank, to bring value to the community and the people, but there's a disconnect. We need to focus on how do we create a more inclusive environment and help people to understand what that means with the differences of perspectives and understanding and cultural backgrounds. And ultimately, first, he said, "Oh no, we don't need to do that. That's not important. We're a bank." Finally, he said, "Delphia, if it's that important to you, go ahead and do something about it." And that's kind of the worst thing that you can say to me is, just give me free reign, because from then on, I kind of took that very seriously to figure out what does this mean. And at the time, diversity, equity, and inclusion, it was, more sensitivity training, but I really wanted to figure out how do we make people connect and began their first programming to focus on inclusive strategies and have been doing that ever since with the focus in human resources.
Okay. For someone kind of new to this area, and it's possible, what is it that you saw in the banks that gave you this revelation? Because you said, productivity financially and so forth. What was missing to you?
Yes, what was missing is the banks in the bank locations that were in areas that were less affluent
Mhm.
were not thriving. Right,
Okay.
their
All right.
the dollar amount, or the financial focus was a little
Mhm.
lower, and not as connected to helping the community grow. We didn't have people coming into those locations looking for retirement plans, looking
Mhm.
for, savings plans, So we had to there was an opportunity to educate, which would build the trust in the community and the trust in the bank. So it was reciprocal. So it really worked out well as people began to learn about how to value the community that they were in. Productivity of those branches began to incline.
Interesting. So you weren't just saying you need new people here, but a new way of thinking and engaging with the community.
Absolutely. If we
Okay.
did not engage with them effectively and build trust
Right.
with the community, those branches would have faltered.
Right, right, I can see that, and there are instances too where when people live in the community or they're more familiar with it, so I'm gonna see you at the barbershop, I'm gonna see you at the store, I'm gonna see you at our Lions Club meeting, and people don't understand how those are opportunities for connection that and as I think about all my professionals I work with, we were engaged in some way and built a relationship and the trust, and then I wanted to know, "What do you do? Where are you?" And
Yes.
yeah, I hadn't really thought about that
Yeah.
before. Thank
Yeah.
you for sharing that.
Sure.
So, in your work with leaders across wait a minute, did you say you were in law school or you were about to go to law school?
Yeah, I did a year in
So you
some.
passed the LSAT
I
and
went
got admitted to law school, and then, yeah, I just something just clicked here. I'm like, "Wait, what?" And then you were like, "I don't wanna do this?"
Yeah, yeah, yeah. We all have our calling, right? And so that was, but when I think about
No,
it,
I love that. That's not a criticism, and I would hate for you to get to the end of 3 or 4 years of law school and
and
realize
then
this is
realize,
not for
right?
me. Right.
Absolutely, absolutely. But from the community that I grew up in, the only way to get out of the community, so to speak, was either be a doctor or a lawyer. That was the mindset.
Same. Dr.
So
Mo, here you go.
yeah,
I
yeah.
just kept going.
Right. And so that's what I wanted to do because I wanted to do something different than what I was seeing in my community. But as I had greater exposure beyond my, youth and the community for which I grew up in, I saw other opportunities. I
Okay.
would have never thought that, I could be an executive in, the various areas I've worked in and have my own business and write my own book and all of those things. That wasn't a staple in my
Understood.
community.
Understood. I heard someone say once, it's you can't dream about things you've never seen.
Absolutely. That's it exactly. That's it.
So, yeah, and it greatly limits us. That's why I used to go to every little school career day I could go to. I don't anymore. Please don't email me. But I used to go to every little I'm serious. I have done hundreds. I would go because I wanted the kids to see a female dentist and I wanted them to see a black dentist. And to this day, I have people tell me they've never seen a black dentist before, which just boggles the mind.
Yes,
But
yes.
yes, thank you. Your work is so important. And yes, this is a wide-ranging interview, folks. I am not a linear thinker. If it's your first time listening, this is just how I do. So stay with me. I work my way back around. We're gonna
I'm
get
right
back to
there
the
with you.
topic at hand.
I am right there with you.
Delphia, in your work with leaders across sectors, what are the most common misconceptions about inclusion that you encounter, and how do you help reframe them?
Yes, that's a fantastic question. I think that I can think of two. There are several, but two top of mind. The first one is that it doesn't involve me. It's all about
Mhm.
those people over there.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
about that group of
They not
individuals.
like us. Yeah.
And exactly. And that's so inaccurate because inclusion is something that touches each and every person. Because if you think about it, every person has had some feeling of exclusion in their life, right? Whether
Mhm.
it was back in kindergarten, whether it was, our first day in high school, whether it was in college, whatever the case may be, there is some point in time where we did not feel 100% included in the environment for which we were in. And I guarantee it didn't feel wonderful. It didn't feel great. That experience is the opposite of how do we bring people along? How do we welcome them? How do we honor them for who they are? That experience is the absolute opposite of inclusion. And so leaders say to me, the biggest misconception again is that it's about them when not realizing that it really is about them as well.
Oh, yeah. Leadership very much sets the tone, even if people are faking it. We can't always legislate your mindset, but behavior. They really have to model that. And I think that's an excellent point that you make. And I just thought about all the times that I haven't included, I felt excluded when I was at professional events and I was at the room and possibly even at the table, but people weren't engaging with me.
Yeah.
It was like,
Yeah.
"Hi, okay, she's here. We got we got representation,
Right.
but
But
and
you're not included, right?
you're
So
not
it's
included. It's not
wonderful.
a good feeling."
Not a good feeling. It's wonderful. Okay, yeah, I have a seat at the table, or I'm in the room, or, and I can tell you on a countless number of times, I have been in boardrooms, etc., and felt like as if I was ignored. Now, I'm not one to allow myself to be ignored,
Right,
right?
right. We're
So,
gonna take up space.
exactly. Yes, I'm going to let you know that I'm there, and most likely you're going to love me in some kind of way, right?
Mhm.
But the reality is, if people don't know how to engage with you, if they have, a hang up or a misconception about you, or they judge you automatically, which we do, we judge people. We're human, we
Absolutely.
do that. But if they allow their judgment to carry through to their actions of exclusion, that's where the problem comes in. And I've been in those situations, like I said, in boardrooms, in various meetings, things of that nature, where people just did not know how to interact because they saw me as, "Oh, that's someone over there. That doesn't involve me," but it does.
Right, right. But it does. Wow. You said some good stuff right there. Let's broaden this because, at the age I am as a boomer, I've been through cycles of, you know, diversity and inclusion and unconscious bias being popular and then not so much. And then popular and then not so much, the ebb and flow as opposed to just changing the way we relate to one another. So I say that because within the current political climate in the United States, and I'll make it broader, within the current political climate around the world, because it's not just us, leading to rollbacks or rebranding of DEI initiatives. How can organizations stay committed without becoming targets or retreating altogether? And I'm going to compound that with somewhere in there. Why are we just changing the language?
Yeah.
And
And so I always say
I'm done.
oh, no, I'm sorry. I'm
No,
like,
I was trying to think how else to wrap that up, but I see you nodding. You understand where I'm trying to go with that because this isn't on my script, but I just thought about what companies are doing, and it's I think it's harmful.
yeah, yeah. So I will say this. My belief is that it's not the words, it's the work that we do,
Okay.
right? If we are truly committed to serving people, to connecting people, to building relationships and making sure that all individuals can be the best that they can possibly be, then that's the work, right? And that we have environments where they can be the best person through resources, all of that. That's the key, right? So in my book, I share this paradigm where we know the pendulum has swung from one side to the other a million times. The reality is our language has evolved, right? We started off with, simply affirmative action, and then we went to sensitivity training, then we went to just diversity, then we decided to add on inclusion, then we decided to add on equity to DEI, then we decided to add on the J, the justice, all of these things,
Right, what
right?
is J?
Justice.
Justice. Okay, I
Yeah.
didn't even know we added that. Thank you. Make a note.
Yeah, yeah. There's been an A, a J, a B, all of these things added to it, right? And so, but here's the challenge. As we have added all of these additional words and different perspectives, we've not really come to the central understanding of what they mean. And so I'm a big proponent of saying that we have to understand that words matter. The words that we use, we need to make sure that the people that we're using them with understand them. When we say diversity, if we said it to 10 different people right now, every person's going to have a different understanding or perspective of what that means, right? Think about that in an environment, a workplace. If you have a responsibility in a workplace and the responsibility is diversity, or even sales, let's say sales, let's take it away from diversity, it's sales.
Okay.
And everybody has a different meaning of what sales means. Guess what? Are you going to be productive? in sales, right? You have to have a common language. And I believe that we have not done that consistently in our society throughout, the world. Everyone has come at it from a personal experience.
Okay.
And so, if we get to the point of realizing that diversity is about differences and similarities in any given environment, Dr.
Mhm.
Roosevelt Thomas gave us that definition more than 30 years ago. And it really is about difference and similarities in any given environment. Think about that. If you have that, you have to think about how do you focus on inclusion, which means making those differences and similarities successful in the environment. So I always assimilate it to a flower garden, right? Or a vegetable garden, whatever, some kind of garden where you have a variety of plants, different species, etc. With those different species of plants, they all need to in order to thrive and survive, they need certain elements. Some need more, some need less, some need different things, some need more water, less water, etc. We have to make sure that the environment is conducive to their success. And if we only have one species of flower, right? One species, then we miss the opportunity to create a full inclusive environment. So they go hand in hand, diversity and inclusion, right? I
Gotcha.
think that equity, if you manage that, that's a byproduct. If you're
Right.
doing that effectively, managing inclusion effectively, then you have equity. It's not something that you have to call out, right?
Right.
If there's an opportunity for us to recognize, again, kind of getting back to what I said, it's not the words that we use, but it's the work that we use. And I think the words have gotten us into trouble because people want to hold on to, well, we got to say do DEI. Well, what
Mhm.
does it really mean? Right?
Right.
How are we defining it? And how are we bringing other people into the fold to really be a part of the journey?
Gotcha. And as you say that, I almost hate that we not hate, but I can see why we need to do away with the acronym because the words in and of themselves,
Yes,
solo, no one could object to. Equity.
absolutely.
What
We've
is the
lumped it all
problem?
together.
Right. And we put it all together and all of a sudden it's a three-letter word. That's a bad word. We gotta reshape that perception. As you were talking, this isn't a question we prepared in advance, but I'm wondering if because so long we had Jim Crow, we had things being done to Asian people that we don't even talk about anymore, and to Native Americans and so forth. And then we had the civil rights movement. Thank you, Dr. King and others, Medgar, that wasn't just for African American, the most prominent leadership being African American, but did that give rise to the legislation, give rise to DEI? Or, I mean, where did it even come from other than some TED Talks or whatever? That's this idea of DEI.
Yeah, I think that I believe that the civil rights movement, came about and really set the standard. And you're right, it was for everyone. It wasn't just for one demographic group. That was for the benefit of our nation,
Yes.
right? And everyone in our nation. But it came about and it said, open the doors. Open the doors for people to be able to, for people who have traditionally been outside of the doors, in workplaces, et cetera, in housing, et cetera. Open the doors so that they can come in. Once people began to walk through those doors who had different experiences, cultures, backgrounds, points of understanding. We as a whole, the entity did not understand how to welcome them in. So that's where we began this journey of now we have to create sensitivity training for the people within, who have made it beyond the door so that we can now work with one another, because what began to happen is people weren't connecting, productivity wasn't as high as it could be, and we weren't really building relationships inside of the walls of whatever entity we're talking about. So that's where it started. I do think that the civil rights movement really started the ball rolling, obviously, to open the doors, get people in, but then we didn't know what to do with people once they got in. So then we started, okay, labeling things, giving training, bringing, like I said, that ripple effect of diversity, then inclusion, then all of those things that I talked about
Mhm.
earlier.
Yeah, yeah. That scene in Hidden Figures comes to mind, and where Taraji P. Henson, and for those who haven't seen it, there are these Black women who are engineers and mathematicians who are hired by NASA during what was still a period of segregation. They were brilliant and they were brought in to assist with the space launch. But there's a really, really poignant scene where Kevin Costner, her boss, gets on her about disappearing for long periods every day. And it's not so much that, but he's yelling at her. And as he's, you know, berating her, you all around her are white males and they're just looking. There's no empathy in their eyes. They're just like, detached from what is happening to her. And to me, that is such a great example of how you can be on a team, but not part of a team
Absolutely.
because they clearly did not connect with her emotionally, mentally, or in any other way. And as a leader, he had missed it.
Yeah. Absolutely. I remember that. Yes, absolutely. And I get to I always say we have to recognize that we have to see people. We have to see them. Inclusion, if you look at the word inclusion, it begins with I, right? So I have to take personal responsibility to see you, right? In order to effectively navigate the landscape. And I think that we miss that. There's a personal responsibility to bringing people along and engaging with them for the success of the environment.
Yeah, and understanding our common humanity. I mean, this is
Yes,
just melanin, you know?
yes.
Yeah.
And if we
Was
just
that
get
Fannie Lou Harper? Who was it that said we bleed bleed
Yes, if we just get to human-centric integrity, that's the bottom line. No matter
good
what
word?
your thoughts are, but if we're all human, human-centric integrity will allow us to value, disagree. We can still disagree with one another if
Sure.
we have to, but it allows us to value that other person as a human. That's the common denominator. We're human.
That's it. That's it. Let's start there and not end there after lots of court litigation and fussing, but let's start there and then we can go to a really good place.
Absolutely.
Wow,
Absolutely.
great. You have such great words. I love these words. Thank you. It's not my field, but I know a little bit about everything. I don't know a whole lot about anything.
Yeah,
So
I love it. That's how we all are. Trust me. You don't
just
want me to put on a
curious.
dental robe and get into anybody's dental room doing anything.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Duly noted. Delphia, we are going to talk about your book, which you reference, including you. But my last question is looking ahead. And I got to be honest, sometimes it's hard for me to do right now. And I'm a motivational speaker, which means I'm a perpetual optimist. But right now, looking ahead, it is a little bit frightening. I want to know what gives you hope about the future of inclusive workplaces and what can listeners, whether they're leaders uh, or employees, be doing right now to make a difference?
Yeah, what gives me hope is knowing that that pendulum keeps on swinging,
Mm,
right? We
right,
go
right.
back and forth. And I do believe also that everything happens for a reason. No matter how challenging we are feeling right now as a whole, I think there's a reason. And I try to rationalize things. So I think about where we were going with regard to the work of inclusion, the work of really bringing people along. And the fact that we didn't have common language, we didn't have a common understanding of what we were talking about. So we weren't moving along we weren't moving forward together. I don't believe. What's happening now requires strategic intervention, right? Requires us to be strategic about how we are connecting with one another. So I think that that's the silver lining because now we can step back and say, okay, how can we intentionally focus on building stronger networks across all spectrums of our nation, right? And I think that that's something that we've missed for a long time. And so that's my hope. That's where my hope
Okay.
resides.
Good, good. So we can reassess and make it better. So maybe this disruption is going to be beneficial to us long term. And I have seen the pendulum swing on so many things. And you're right. Sometimes we have to look back at history as we're trying to envision a future, and we can overcome this as well.
Yes.
Before we go, this has been just delightful. Thank you for rolling with me. 'cause I just don't know even sometimes what I'm gonna say, so I appreciate you being adaptable and flexible.
You and I are
I have so much fun with this show because of that. Because 'cause I'll hear something like, "Wait a minute, what's she say?" But please, before we go, share a little bit about your book, including you. I hope I have the title correct, and
yes.
let listeners know how what they can expect, from the book and how they can most importantly, how they can get a copy.
Yes, absolutely. So, yes, the title is Including You, Leading Inclusion from Where You Are. Baseline of the book really focuses on the premise that we all have personal responsibility and can take personal accountability for creating inclusive environments. We don't have to wait for the CEO to, set a procedure or policy or a mandate within the organization. We don't have to wait for the CHRO, human resources, to give a directive in terms of how we should operate within any environment. We as individuals know what it feels like to be excluded. And so, with that, there's an opportunity for us to take responsibility to ensure that we're not part of creating that negative experience, that we are actually doing small things to create inclusive environments. It doesn't require anyone to go and take a new course or shift their focus with regard to their job responsibilities. It simply requires us to be mindful of the human factor, to be mindful of the fact that we as individuals need others to survive. And in order to do that, we need to make sure that we wrap our arms around people in ways that create a safety net, inclusive environments, and demonstrates value for the attributes that people bring to the table.
Absolutely. Love it, love it, and as we do that, we lead by example. Someone is always watching. You never know
Absolutely.
who you're impacting, but if it's the right one, if it's, young Gandhi or Martin or Midger or whomever, I know I keep saying the same names, but they
No,
come
that's
into mind with this conversation, but if you influence the right one and you're being influential, you can make such a huge difference beyond measure with that ripple effect. I love the title. I'm sorry I didn't have the full title, but
that's okay. That's all right.
and I love the work that you're doing, the energy you bring to it. You're so positive. I've talked to other people about it, and they're just I think sometimes people don't listen because it's so serious. It's serious, but you don't have to be like it's the funeral about it.
Right.
We're trying to burst something, not bury it, right?
Right, right.
I
This
just made that up. Let me write that down. No,
I
I'm kidding.
love
Go
right
ahead.
there, right there. That's good. That's good. Yes, absolutely. But it's a renewal. It's an opportunity for us to really just think, because I'm not telling you anything new, right? This is stuff that we bury in our brains. We were taught back in kindergarten how to treat one another.
Yes.
Be nice,
Yes.
don't kick, don't bite, don't say mean things, all of those things.
Oh, don't bite? I missed that one. Anyway,
So,
anyway, to
but
your point, we know better. Let's do better.
let's do better. And you can find the book on Amazon. You can find it in the bookstores, Barnes and Noble. Barnes and Noble. You can also find it on my website, thehousesolutions.com. And if you send me a message, I might be able to get you a free uh, audiobook. So I can do that for maybe the top 5 guests.
Great. Great. We will put that in the show notes, and whoever is liking and subscribing will be notified immediately when this episode is posted. So hit that subscribe button and set yourself up for a free audiobook from the phenomenal Delphia Howze. You have been a wonderful, wonderful guest. I appreciate these provoking insights and strategies and all you're doing to make the world a better place for everyone. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
And thank you, listeners, for tuning in. Again, please hit that subscribe button to be notified when new episodes are released. And please share this. It's great when you like and make a comment that helps the algorithm. But what really helps me with my mission to empower others is when you share these episodes. So please consider doing so to individuals or to your network. Until next time, be well and be brave. Thank you.